This is Nick.
This is Jack.
It's Friday, the real Friday, April 21st. And today's pod is the best one yet. It's a T-boy.
What'd you just roll out of bed? Where's the iron shirt, Nick?
I didn't want to get called out. Now I'm getting called. Yeah, I know there's a little wrinkle here, isn't there? I'm not happy about
The
it.
lavender is lovely, though.
I kind of look like I'm wearing a giant flower.
That's why I zip up before the pod.
First story. What do we got, man?
SpaceX just launched a spaceship that will one day transport 100 humans to Mars.
This spaceship exploded, but that is not a bad thing.
For our second story, the biggest news on Wall Street is the news about BuzzFeed News.
BuzzFeed News is all of the news, and it just shut down.
Our third and final story. It's the last weekend of the Coachella Music Festival.
But Coachella, it isn't a concert. It's a $100 million profit puppy.
With a lot of see-through pants.
And a lot of Aperol spritzes.
But Yetis, before we hit that fantastic mix.
A wonderful mix of stories to go into the weekend with, man. I love the mix.
Our buddies at Henley & Partners just published what they call the ultimate list of the world's wealthiest places.
Yetis, we just got the data on the Earth's richest cities.
So what is it? What is the world's wealthiest city, Nick?
Jack, what is the city with the most millionaires? Who is that city? How many millionaires do they got?
There's one city with almost 1 million millionaires. No joke.
Okay, New York City has 340,000 millionaires.
New York has more millionaires than Cincinnati has people.
New York has more millionaires than St. Louis has people.
If you walk through the West Village, point at someone, chances are they're a millionaire.
Jack and I did the Manhattan math. New York City has 3 millionaires on every single block.
All right, let's add 3 zeros. New York has the most millionaires. What city has the most billionaires?
It's a good question, Jack. Well, the most billionaires, that is the city of San Francisco.
I mean, it was a gold rush in the first place.
It was, and apparently the gold is like still here, isn't it, Jack?
Except the gold is tech IPOs now.
Yeti, San Francisco has 63 billionaires roaming around the Embarcadero right now.
There's more commas in that city than in any other city.
Oh, and Jack, what do billionaires eat for breakfast?
I think they eat millionaires for breakfast.
They eat millionaires every single day.
They sprinkle on some thousandaires on top of their millionaires.
But Yetis, Jack and I know there are a lot of cities on planet Earth, and there are a lot of cities in America, aren't there?
Miami has the most people with 1 million Dogecoins.
And Houston has the most people with 1 million barrels of oil.
And Boston has the most people with 1 million oversized Boston Red Sox hoodies.
Boston has 1 billion people who would bet you $1 billion that the Bruins are going to win the Stanley Cup this year.
So congratulations to New York City and San Francisco.
But Boston and just outside of Boston, they would like a recount.
Nick, let's hit our 3 stories.
15 years before this song, 2 boys from the Northeast met in a dorm. They had an idea that caused a cultural storm. It's the best one yet, but the best is the norm. Jack, Nick, that's it. I don't even think they need to practice. 50%, that's a fat tip. T-Boy City on your at-list. If you know, you know, cause we ready to go. We can't wait no more, so just start the show. Start the show.
For our first story, SpaceX just put the biggest, most powerful rocket ever 24 miles into the air.
It exploded.
Yes, it did.
But it's a win. Just chalk it up as research and development.
Oh, Yetis, Jack and I, we have covered a whole lot of vehicles on this show,
Yes,
haven't
we have.
Yes, we have. Yes, we have. Yes,
We've seen a whole bunch of chassis.
We've seen food delivery robots, electric pickup trucks, trains, planes, cruise ships. We once covered a mattress that had wheels.
Did we?
We should have.
But this vehicle, this news from yesterday was the most powerful vehicle yet by far.
We're talking about the Starship. Elon Musk's SpaceX launched the Starship.
The Starship, when standing on top of its rocket, stands almost 400 feet tall, which is 100 feet taller than the tip of the Statue of Liberty.
Now, it sounds like a prop in a George Lucas movie, doesn't it, Jack?
Yeah, this is Millennium Falcon's big brother.
And yesterday, SpaceX, the most valuable private company in the United States, shot that giant rocket from a southern tip of Texas into space.
The rocket had 33 engines that were each 10 feet tall.
Jack, can we sprinkle on a little more numerical context here?
Those 33 huge engines lifted 10 million pounds 24 miles high yesterday.
Food delivery chassis? That robot can't pull that off, Jack.
Now, after that, the Starship was going to separate from the rocket booster, complete the test flight, and then gracefully splash safely into the Gulf of Mexico.
But here's the problem, besties. That last part that Jack mentioned, it didn't happen.
Right, because 4 minutes in to this live streamed event, which was really entertaining to watch, the Starship and the booster it sat on both exploded.
Or as Elon Musk's SpaceX calls it, it was a rapid, unscheduled disassembly.
Translation, rocket go boom boom.
But funny thing Jack and I noticed, and this is what we found so fascinating about the story. SpaceX employees didn't cry, they didn't complain, they didn't mope that their giant, expensive rocket blew up and exploded in front of everybody.
Quite the contrary. They were celebrating. Like the moment the rocket exploded on the live stream, you could hear employees at headquarters celebrating in the background.
You could hear them popping champagne, not crying.
Now, crucially, there were no souls on board. There was no humans on this flight. No one was harmed or injured or killed yesterday.
However, SpaceX chalks this up as a huge win because they set new launch records and they learned a bunch yesterday.
Now, the end goal of Starship is eventually to bring 100 passengers per flight up to space and drop those people off on the moon or on Mars.
The goal is to get the cost to run that rocket ship down to $10 million per flight or $100,000 per passenger.
It's a little more than a Delta flight, but you're going to Mars.
And Jack, Elon Musk has some pretty ambitious plans for this Starship, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. This Starship is the spaceship that Elon dreams of using to colonize Mars someday.
Jack, when your son Wilder, my pod son, goes to boarding school on Mars in like 20 years, he's going to be flying on this Starship.
He'll have a ticket on the Starship.
Yet Silicon Valley moves fast and break things, but SpaceX explodes and learns things.
That's why they chalked yesterday up as a win.
So Jack, what's the takeaway for our buddies over at $100 billion SpaceX?
What would be a failure for NASA is a success for SpaceX.
Yetis, in 2025, in just 2 years, NASA's planning Artemis 3. That's their novel mission to put the first woman and first person of color on the moon.
On the dark side of the moon for the first time, too.
And here's the thing. They're not going to be using government-built NASA spaceships for that big NASA mission.
No, they're going to use this SpaceX Starship to get those astronauts onto the moon.
In fact, NASA has actually hired SpaceX to build its future spaceships to go to the moon and to Mars.
Why? Because SpaceX can afford failures that NASA can't afford.
It is. If a NASA shuttle exploded yesterday, it would have been seen as a huge failure, publicly wasted money.
But when SpaceX explodes a rocket, it's applauded because it was research on the pathway to success.
So the way we see it, what would have been a huge tragedy for NASA is actually a big success for SpaceX. For our second story, the biggest news yesterday was the news about BuzzFeed News. BuzzFeed is shutting down BuzzFeed News.
But it's not just BuzzFeed News. This is the story of all news.
All right, Jack, let's travel back to January. We did a BuzzFeed story, but it was kind of a surprise. You know what we were talking about with that story?
A few months after interviewing Jonah Peretti, the co-founder and CEO of BuzzFeed.
That was fantastic. Love jumping in T-Boy style to that.
We learned that BuzzFeed is hiring, but they're not hiring people. BuzzFeed was hiring robots.
Yetis, BuzzFeed was hiring artificial intelligence to do BuzzFeed writing work.
Here was their plan. Use AI to write articles, listicles, and buzzy headlines for free.
Yeah, you're on BuzzFeed right now. If you see an article that's like top 20 enchiladas in Albuquerque, ooh, I will click on that one. That is interesting.
A robot wrote that article.
A robot figured out what the best enchiladas were.
But here's the new news from BuzzFeed. They're laying off another 15% of their human staff, and they're shutting down BuzzFeed News.
Yetis, on that depressing news, BuzzFeed stock fell 20% yesterday and is now trading at just 75 cents a share.
BuzzFeed was once a booming success of like the mid-2000s when Nick and I were graduating college. It was worth $1.5 billion. Now it's worth $100 million.
So here's what we're thinking when we saw this story. The shutting down of BuzzFeed News, that is actually the biggest news story about the news industry of the entire year.
BuzzFeed News wasn't pumping out Disney princess quizzes.
No, it was not. It cannot tell you if you were an Ariel, and it cannot tell you if you were a Jasmine.
BuzzFeed News was a respected digital-first journalism outlet.
BuzzFeed News was once called a serious challenger to the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and other papers of record.
It was also the CEO's pet project.
It was. It got a lot of resources, BuzzFeed News.
Jonah Peretti wrote in his sad letter yesterday about shutting it down that he had overinvested in BuzzFeed News because he loved the work and the mission of it.
And I'm sorry, Jack, can we go into the kitchen and look at what's on the fridge over at BuzzFeed News?
BuzzFeed News won the Pulitzer Prize in 2021 and has been the finalist for the top award in journalism 4 times. But now, to save money and keep the rest of BuzzFeed alive, Jonah Peretti just shuttered his passion project.
One of the biggest digital news successes of the past 20 years is now over. And that's sad. So, Jack, what's the takeaway for our buddies over at BuzzFeed?
The BuzzFeed News story is the story of all news.
Yetis, over the last decade, BuzzFeed News never turned a profit. In fact, BuzzFeed News lost $10 million a year.
BuzzFeed News wasn't essential or comprehensive enough to demand a paid subscription.
And it wasn't diversified enough to handle the slowdown in ads like we have right now.
But those problems weren't unique to BuzzFeed News. They reflect the whole news industry right now.
For example, the whole media industry is going through major layoffs right now.
Vox, ESPN, Vice, Dow Jones, they've all laid people off recently.
And the whole media industry is also shutting down major projects right now.
Washington Post just shuttered its magazine, and NPR just shut down 3 or 4 of its pods.
Look, besties, ever since the internet, the business of news has suffered.
But now, even BuzzFeed News, a company born in the internet era, couldn't survive.
And that is why we think this BuzzFeed News story is the story of all news.
And now a word from our sponsor, Robinhood.
Want to invest in stocks, but you want to save time too?
Robinhood's Cash Card helps you add to your investments with every purchase you make.
They'll round up your change with every tap and invest it into the stock or crypto of your choice.
Your future self will thank you.
And these roundups, they can really add up.
If you're not investing with Robinhood yet, to get started, go to Robinhood.com/T-Boy.
Spending account offered through Robinhood Money, NMLS 1990968.
The Cash Card is issued by Sutton Bank, member FDIC, pursuant to a license by MasterCard.
Certain limitations apply. Roundup services are provided by RHY.
You must have a brokerage account with RHF or a cryptocurrency account with RHC in order to fully utilize investment features.
All investments involve risk.
Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC.
For our third and final story before the weekend, Coachella ends this weekend, but the money just keeps on flowing in for Coachella, doesn't it, Jack?
But Coachella's brand isn't living up to its potential.
Can I read to you this set list of artists? Bad Bunny, Frank Ocean, Blink-182, Jack.
Even Blondie, whose front woman, the Blondie, is pushing 80 years old.
Yeah, they are all performing at Coachella right now.
Coachella, it's Burning Man meets Woodstock.
Coachella, it's not a concert, it's a feeling.
But Coachella isn't just a concert, you're right, Nick. They're not hosting Gaga a couple years ago and Beyonce before that for their love of arts.
Yetis, no, it is not, because Coachella is a business.
Coachella is the first annual music festival that made $100 million in profits in a single year. They did it in 2017, according to the Grammys.
In fact, Coachella makes more profit in 6 days of this event than some Fortune 500 companies make in an entire year.
And that's a shocker, because before 2010, they never made profits.
No, they weren't. This company, this business, this whole event, Coachella, it wasn't even profitable back then.
But it is today.
Yes, it is.
And the one thing that changed, the amount of attendees, the amount of sponsors, the amount of money at this mega festival.
What is it, Jack?
It was influencers.
It was influencers. And Yetis, there is one company that has dominated Coachella's influencer scene since 2015. And what is that company?
Revolve.
Revolve. Yetis, you may have seen Revolve. Revolve is designer clothing. It is a designer clothing retail brand.
You can buy cute tops that you saw on Instagram for $250.
We're talking Coachella style fashion here. It's like a Free People-ish, but like a little bit more edge than Anthropologie.
Revolve has built an influencer army.
Yes, they have.
And Coachella is their annual battleground.
This store, Revolve, sent over 100 fashionista influencers to rep the brand at Coachella this year. In fact, they hosted a Revolve party that got 5 billion impressions on Instagram.
And Revolve has turned Coachella into a giant photo shoot for posts on Insta.
Perfectly put, Jack. Because an influencer posts a cowboy hat when they're at the scene, and then you tap to buy that cowboy hat on Revolve, and then the influencer gets a commission, and Revolve gets paid.
In fact, Revolve has gotten so big with that strategy, they've decided to host their own festival that sits right beside Coachella.
And this Revolve festival, it got Cardi B and Kendall Jenner to come. Oh, and Hailey Bieber.
And now 70% of Revolve sales come directly from posts from those influencers.
70% of their sales are coming from these influencers. So the way Jack and I see it, Revolve has become the unofficial brand of Coachella, but we're wondering, why isn't there an official Coachella of Coachella?
Missed opportunity, Coachella. Missed opportunity.
So Jack, what's the takeaway for our buddies over at Coachella?
Coachella is the most under-optimized brand we can think of right now.
Okay, Yetis, Coachella's brand recognition is nearly universal, and yet they only make money for 6 days out of the entire year.
The difference between what Coachella makes in money and how well it's known is a huge market opportunity.
Yes, it is. Coachella's expertise, it is as a concert organizer, so they could expand their core product.
They could expand the brand by putting on a Coachella East Festival in Florida, or a Coachella South Festival in Tulum,
or Coachella Med over on Ibiza, Jack.
or Coachella North in Vermont, no?
I don't think see-through pants are legal in Vermont, Jack. Yetis, then Coachella could extend its brand beyond its core product into related products.
Tequila is the top-selling drink at Coachella. We're surprised there's no Coachella tequila sold year-round.
Of course, there's always the risk that you overextend the brand like some brands have.
You don't want to dilute the value of your brand.
But Coachella, it has not tested the limits yet. It is the most under-optimized brand we can think of. Jack, can you whip up the takeaways for us for the Real Friday?
SpaceX's Starship exploded yesterday, but it was progress on its mission to Mars.
What would be a failure for NASA is a success for SpaceX.
For our second story, to keep the rest of BuzzFeed alive, Jonah Peretti had to shut down BuzzFeed News.
The BuzzFeed News story is the story of all news.
And our third and final story, the second weekend of Coachella starts now.
But the brand Coachella, you are not living up to your potential.
Coachella tequila, Coachella see-through pants, where are they?
Coachella podcast. Yes, Jack and I will perform next year. Now, time for the best fact yet. This one sent in by Jack and me because we found some really fun facts for you, Yetis.
All right. So yesterday, we read that whole New Yorker profile on the Innovation Lab at Taco Bell.
We covered Taco Bell's Innovation Lab, and we found some really good stuff for you, didn't we, Jack?
There's some wild facts about this restaurant chain.
We're just going to read off all the facts we discovered.
Taco Bell serves 8 billion packets of that hot sauce every year.
Taco Bell tried to open in Mexico twice and failed twice.
Taco Bell used to be owned by PepsiCo, which stupidly sold it in 1997.
And remember that Taco Bell Chihuahua, like the Yo Quiero one?
Yo Quiero Taco Bell.
Yeah, exactly. The one that was in the ads. Where's that Taco Bell Chihuahua now, Jack?
That is the exact same Chihuahua owned by Elle Woods in the wonderful film Legally Blonde.
If you thought that Chihuahua looked familiar in Legally Blonde.
Because it did.
Yeah, Yo Quiero.
A Harvard law degree.
Yetis, you looked fantastic this week. Jack, you looked fantastic and a whole bunch of wins to celebrate this week.
This was a big week. Yetis, I hope it was for you too.
Yetis, if you haven't yet, you can play our T-Boy Pop Biz Pop Quiz every Friday at tboypod.com.
Other than that, just have a fantastic weekend.
Celebrate some wins, post them on Instagram, tag us. We want to see what you're winning.
Nick and I, we'll see you tomorrow.
Can't wait, but we'll see you Monday.
We'll see you Monday.
And before we go, congratulations to Yetis Diane and Robert Binns, who are celebrating a 1-year anniversary of eloping to Puerto Rico.
Congratulations to Katie and Zach, who are getting married this weekend in Austin, Texas.
Not too shabby. And Alicia Comer and Adam Gordon are also getting married over in lovely San Diego. Have a fantastic one.
Happy 1-year anniversary to Melissa and Trent Monte in Broussard, Louisiana.
And Cruzy and Branda Blanton just launched their first ever real estate estate business together as a couple.
And a big job well done to Gagan Makija, who organized the Food and Agriculture Conference at the Tuck Business School.
Get this guy an A. And a happy birthday to Jakey Dwyer down in Charlottesville, Virginia, but playing some wall ball just outside Boston.
Happy birthday to Sarah McKinnon in Joburg, South Africa.
And Jeff Wang is celebrating his birthday by running 10 miles through Chino Hill, California.
And happy 35th birthday to Tien Miao Lee, who's visiting their family in China.
And Arya Vasquez, enjoy that 8th birthday all day in Super Mario World.
Mario is my absolute favorite.
Yes, Mario is, isn't he?
And happy 3rd birthday to Elise Ortiz Bari at Chuck E. Cheese's.
And Grace Zex turning 25 in Chapel Hill, Tar Heel, North Carolina.
Happy 18th birthday to legendary Yeti Ava Perez from Verona, Wisconsin, where guac is still extra.
And Isabel Lee celebrating that 3rd birthday down in Atlanta.
Happy 12th birthday to Elliot Schneider in Wichita Falls.
And Joe Delog, the Dinkwack, is celebrating a birthday in Sunnyside, Queens.
Happy birthday to Daniel Lohavy in Denver, Colorado.
And a happy birthday to Benson Taekwondo Shea, turning 12 in Flower Mound, Texas.
And Victor Maizano is celebrating the birthday the right way, right there on the pickleball court.
Amanda Pierce, happy 35th birthday over in Maryland.
And happy 1st birthday to Avery Grace, who's turning a T-boy the best 1 yet years old in Potwin, Texas. This is Jack. I own stock of Disney, and Nick and I both own stock of Robinhood. And now a word from our sponsor, Robinhood.
Golf at 11 a.m., pickleball by 2.
Gotta see the grandkids, but I don't know if we'll have enough time.
You're probably not thinking about retiring to Del Boca Vista quite yet.
But you could be thinking about how to afford retirement.
So the newest product from Robinhood, the IRA.
The only individual retirement account with a 1% match on every eligible dollar you contribute every year. Limitations apply.
In an IRA, your money has tax-deferred or tax-free growth potential.
So older you can maybe play pickleball at 2 o'clock.
To get started, go to Robinhood.com/TBoy and get your first stock for free. Conditions apply.
That's Robinhood.com/TBOY.
All investments involve risk. Contributions to and withdrawals from IRAs may entail tax consequences. Robinhood does not provide tax advice.
Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC.
A lot of Aperol spritzes.